Hello, my name is Joeli Brearley, and I am the founder of Pregnant Then Screwed. And I also have a podcast called To Be a Boy, which is about raising boys in a modern day society.
Brilliant, thank you. You founded Pregnant Then Screwed, which I know you stepped down earlier this year, but how do you describe to people what your work is at this point, what your focus is?
Well, right now I'm about to launch a new organisation called Growth Spurt, which is all about that transition when parents go on parental leave and then they go back to work, which is often the point where it all goes badly wrong. So I'm on a mission to fix what I'm calling the transition gap so that parents feel valued and supported when they return to work and they're able to progress their career whilst also raising a child.
Okay, and that's obviously you talk about parents there, so we're talking about mums and dads, but clearly there is there's a lot of focus in your work on mums and mums going back to work, and we talk about this event being Can Mums Have It All? And what is having it all? What does that mean to you as a mother, as an activist?
I mean, I think the term is nonsense, and I think it makes women feel very guilty because it puts pressure on them to have this really successful career, this incredible social life, an amazing relationship with their partner, and then be the perfect mother, which of course there is no such thing as the perfect mother. To me, having it all is happiness. It's being able to have children, spend quality time with those children, and be able to fulfill your own dreams and ambitions, whatever that looks like to you. And I think to some degree that is possible, but I also think there are many barriers that prevent women from having successful careers that are completely unnecessary and need dismantling. And you look at other countries and they are much better at this than we are in the UK. So it is possible. But I also think men don't have it all either. I think men have this huge amount of pressure on them to be the breadwinner, to go to work, to have quite stressful jobs and to not spend time with their children. And we know that the most common thing that men say on their deathbed is, I wish I had worked less and spent more time with my family. So at the moment, none of us are completely achieving this ridiculous notion of having it all.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you talk about your work with boys, I feel like you could be on one of our other panels, which is to do with where have all the good men gone, which I've just had a chat about this morning on toxic masculinity and the like. But what are the most significant barriers that mothers face in finding that proper balance, if you like?
So what I've been working on is the motherhood penalty, which is the systematic disadvantages that mothers face in the workplace. It's essentially the gender pay gap. About 80% of the gender pay gap is made up of the motherhood penalty. And what those barriers are that from the point that a woman gets pregnant, she's seen as less committed, less productive, and just a bit of a burden to business. So she tends to be sidelined and ignored from the point that she gets pregnant. And we know that 74,000 women a year get pushed out of their jobs for either getting pregnant or for taking maternity leave. So that's about 1 in 8 women get pushed out. It's a woman every 10 minutes in the UK. In addition to that, then she goes on maternity leave. And in this country, we have a really long period of maternity leave. It can take up to 12 months. It's paid very badly, but it's actually quite a significant amount of time. Whereas men get 2 weeks, if that. 1 in 4 don't even take their 2 weeks. So women are taking these long periods of time out of work. Men are not. They're going straight back to work and continuing their career. And then when it comes to returning to work, we have this really expensive, dysfunctional childcare system. We have one of the most expensive childcare systems in the world. So at that point, the mother is firmly in the position of primary caregiver. So she is the one that starts making the career sacrifices. She says, okay, I'll work fewer hours so we're less reliant on childcare, or I'll drop out of my career because childcare is too expensive and we can't get it. Once she returns to work, she then looks for flexible working so that she's able to manage her professional and personal obligations, because she's usually the one as well doing the majority of the unpaid labour, caring, the housework, cooking, cleaning, the sock pairing. So she needs part-time work in order to manage all of those responsibilities. But part-time work is paid on average £5 per hour. Full-time work, and you're half as likely to be promoted. So you can see how the motherhood penalty sort of hacks away at women's ability to progress in their careers. And none of it is their fault. And none of it is the fault of men. You know, men are desperate to be more involved in caring. It's just that they only get 2 weeks paternity leave. We have the worst paternity benefit in Europe. So it's the way that our system is set up means that by the time a woman's first child is 12 years old, her hourly pay rate is 33% behind a man's. It just gets worse and worse and worse the more children she has and the older the children get.
Everything you just explained sort of described my life up until this point. My eldest is about to go to high school. And I'll just tell you this very quickly just to frame the next question. But my wife worked for a charity. It was for a hospice charity. And then she had our first child. And she was doing sort of 60 hours a week before she went off on maternity there. And they said, well, when you come back, we'll do a job share. She went to go back and they said, no, you can only come back if you come back to the 60 hours a week that you were doing beforehand. And she had no option but to quit that job. And I always thought it was interesting because this is it's a charity. It was supposedly a wonderful place to work, very progressive, all of these things. But even that as a workplace couldn't find a way to make this work for somebody who'd done what millions of people do every single year, and it's this role that workplaces have, but they're trying to balance the books at the same time. But that role is surely one of the most important ones in terms of this problem that you describe.
I mean, she would have had rights actually in that situation, which a lot of people don't realise. And the notion that you have to work 60 hours a week to have a fulfilling career and be able to do your job is an absolute nonsense. You know, we know that actually when companies enable flexible working, they enable people to work fewer hours, that those companies thrive and productivity increases. You know, we work one of the longest hours in Europe, in the UK. And yet we have one of the lowest rates of productivity. We seem to have this culture where we just see long hours as equaling productivity and a healthy bottom line, and it's just not true. And we've seen this as well with working from home arguments that have been happening recently. You've had lots of white, powerful men trying to drag people back to the office for no reason whatsoever, because all of the evidence and research shows that they're much more productive when they're at home and they're happier and they're healthier and they're sleeping longer. So we just seem, we haven't got the memo in the UK that long hours doesn't equal productivity, that mothers are just as productive and just as dedicated to their careers as they were before they had children, and the dads want to do the caring as much as mothers. We're so behind other countries on this, and it's deeply frustrating, and it's damaging, you know, the mental health and the income potential of women and, you know, men's ability to be involved with their children.
Yeah, okay, fascinating. And this, the panel that you're talking on, of course, Can Mums Have It All, notwithstanding the title now, which we will definitely change since you said that. Unfortunately, it's all printed.
No, no, I quite like the title. I like the title.
Intentionally provocative, which could be a strapline for the Leeds International Festival Ideas. But do you think there is a portrayal of perfect motherhood that you see in the media, particularly on social platforms? This is what a perfect mother looks like. I'm thinking particularly of who's the singer now, whose name has gone absolutely from my mind, the X Factor singer. Stacey Solomon, who appears to be, you know, the perfect mother with her wonderful home, which is always incredibly clean. Do you think that is an issue, that portrayal of perfect motherhood?
Oh, absolutely. It's a real problem. And it's been a problem for centuries. It's not a recent problem. We've had this problem since probably, you know, the 17th century, when women their value was tied up in how they raised their children. And it really, really hasn't changed. And then you have, you know, psychologists like John Bowlby, who had the attachment theory, where they said unless mothers are spending all of their time with their children for the first 3 years of life, then children are going to be mentally damaged. And it goes on and on and on. And then now we have social media, where you have the clean influencers who were all women, who are telling women how to tidy their house and keep their house clean. And we know that women are judged more harshly if people come over and their house is a mess than men are. We know that women are judged more harshly if their kids play up in public than men are. And so we try to live up to this ideal of being the perfect mother, and it's really damaging women. And we know that their mental health is deteriorating as a result because they'll never live up to that standard. It's completely impossible. And simultaneously, we know that women are having things like intrusive thoughts all the time, when they're seeing these visions of horrible things happening to their children and their family, or they're seeing visions of them doing awful things to their family because they are so paranoid about getting this wrong that it's their safety mechanism in overdrive, like working on time. And we're not talking about all of these visions and mental health issues that mothers in particular are experiencing, that I believe is all comes back to the pressure that is on women constantly to live up to these ridiculous ideals.
What attracted you to the Leeds International Festival of Ideas?
I mean, I am a Yorkshire woman, so the Leeds International Festival of Ideas is particularly appealing to me. It feels often that there isn't much that happens in the north. It feels like it all gets taken over to London, and I find that deeply frustrating as a very passionate northerner who's lived in Leeds and for many years. And I also want the opportunity to talk to a different audience about these specific challenges, because it's amazing how few people realise that pregnancy and maternity discrimination is still a massive problem. It's not reducing, it's increasing, and that mothers are still facing these significant barriers when trying to have children and a career.
And why do you think it's important to have that discussion in a space like the Leeds Playhouse in this instance, but having the discussion in person in a room rather than social media or online?
Because I think it's really important that people get to connect with people when they're having these very emotive conversations. We used to hold events, Pregnant and Screwed live events, and everybody would have cried and hugged before, the first speaker came on, because these are very deeply personal, emotive conversations, and people want to be able to actually connect with other humans when they're having them, rather than do it through a screen.